Hey everyone, I'm here underneath the 2001 Jaguar XKR that I bought for my wife as a surprise a couple of weeks ago. And whenever I buy a new-to-me car, I usually go through and I change the fluids out pretty much immediately just because I assume the previous owner never changed them. And that's especially the case on one of these cars. That's my son Robert. He wants to say hi and he's helping me today. When these cars came out, this was at the beginning of this transmission's life, this is actually a Mercedes 5-speed automatic, which if you're watching this, you probably know that already. And in those days, I was a Jaguar mechanic when these cars were new, and these transmissions were shrouded in mystery, and we were kind of scared of touching them. They were considered to be sealed for life by Jaguar, which if you know anything about transmissions means that it's going to have a very, very short life because you need to change the transmission fluid. Some transmissions more than others, but especially on one of these. We pretty routinely saw these transmissions go out at 100,000 miles, sometimes sooner. But nobody really knew a whole lot about them. We rebuilt transmissions at our shop, but they were mostly GM and Ford transmissions, and you couldn't get parts for these, and they were, like I said, they were shrouded in mystery. So things have changed now in the past 20 years, and this is probably one of the most popular 5-speed automatics produced because Chrysler started putting this same transmission in their cars. That was during the Daimler Chrysler era. And obviously it was put in the Jaguars, and I actually had this exact same transmission in the Mercedes E55, which this car replaced. So this car only has 59,000 miles on it. It's a 2001, and I think it's safe to say that this is the original fluid. That said, it doesn't look too bad, all things considered. It is kind of burnt. It smells sort of burnt.
Hello.
Hi, Robert. But I'm going to go ahead and change it. I've got it apart, obviously. The filter, it says Mercedes on it, so that supports it being original. Of course, the oil filter said Jaguar on it, so it might have also just been dealer serviced, but I'm pretty certain this is the original fluid, because while the recommendations have changed since 2000, people usually didn't change the fluid on these. So it smells original. A couple of comments I'm going to make. So, when we were working on these when they were new, we were afraid of using anything but the specific Mercedes fluid because it was a $12,000 transmission. I guess we were able to buy them specially for $5,000 plus the labor, so it was expensive if it went out. But now we know more about them, so I'm not too worked up about using the dealer parts in the specific Mercedes fluid that's $10 a quart. These transmissions work just fine with Valvoline MaxLife. It meets the Mercedes NAG1 fluid specification, which is what this uses. I ran MaxLife in my E55 that has the same transmission, and it worked just fine, no problems. Filters, you should always use a good filter, but I bought this CarQuest filter from Advance Auto. Comes with a new gasket as well. Whole lot cheaper than the OEM one, and the CarQuest filters, last that I have been able to tell, are made by Wix, which is a very high quality filter brand. So I'm not worried about it. That said, if I have problems, I'm either not going to post the video or I'll post it in the comments. But just a couple things to note. You've just got 6 bolts to remove the pan, which is really easy. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then up front 5 and 6. One other thing that if you have one of these cars you'll note is that it doesn't have a dipstick with it. It has a dipstick tube. And let me come up here and I'll show you where it is. And here I have a dipstick sticking out of it. So this goes, you can kind of see there's that tube down there. And so it has this black cap on it, same on my E55 that I used to have. And that's actually the transmission dipstick tube. So you have to buy one of these dipsticks. I bought this for the E55 off of eBay. They're pretty cheap. However, note how far out it's sticking, and that's by design. It's called a dipstick tool, but it's intended to be used on all of the different cars that have this transmission in them. So it's really long because if you have a car that has you have a car that just has a longer dipstick tube, then you're gonna need a longer dipstick. But if you have a car like this that doesn't need quite as long of one, it sticks out. The problem with that is that it can make it kind of hard to figure out for the first time if it's in all the way. And I'll show you over here, going back to get my light real quick. So you can see, maybe see, if you see sort of the, see if I can point to it. So over up here where my fingers are right now, that's the dipstick tube that comes down. And I don't think you're going to be able to see it, but it comes through that little tube right there, and the dipstick is actually not all the way down. So I wasn't able to get a good reading on what the fluid was, and at least for this dipstick that was cheap, the Chrysler or Mercedes ones are probably better. It has markings on it, but it doesn't have a full and add range like you would normally have on a transmission dipstick. So what I did was I made sure that my drain bucket was empty. So I'm going to measure the amount of fluid that I got out to make sure I put the same amount back in. Another thing that I'm just going to note for you is that a lot of times what people do, and what I'm planning on doing, is they'll drain the transmission fluid, they'll change the filter, and then they'll run the car for a little while, and then they'll change it. Again, they'll drain it out of the pan. So I just want to make a note here that if you take a look, there's the drain plug, and that drain plug is sticking into the pan a little bit. So when I dropped this pan, there was probably another half quart or quarter of a quart worth of fluid. So you're not going to get all the fluid out of the pan draining it that way. So you're not going to have the same amount of fluid in that you change each time. So now I've got my other helpers that have come in the garage, as you can probably hear, my little girls. But so just a couple of things. Don't be scared of doing this transmission fluid change. It's really not as big of a deal, and you don't have to buy the super expensive stuff that Jaguar recommends or that Mercedes recommends. There are more economical options. So hopefully this was helpful to some folks, and have a good day. Hey everyone, so this is just kind of an update and a few corrections here. So the other day I wasn't sure if I had the dipstick tool in all the way. So this is in all the way. It's got about a foot left of it. And the car's hot, which is what you need. You need the transmission to be hot for checking the temperature. I now have fluid, you probably can't see, but I have fluid on the dipstick, and it's showing pretty much up to where it's supposed to be, which is about to the 5 mark. It's sort of hard to figure out if this is completely perfect, but I think before I had to add about a quart to it, so it was actually low on fluid, even though I wasn't clear on that before. So the tool kind of makes it harder because you don't just bottom the thing out. It does leave some out, but about a foot's right. I was about a quart low on fluid, and this transmission's definitely shifting better now with the MaxLife than it was before. So I'm probably going to drain the pan another time or two and then refill it, and then that'll be the end of it for me. And then I'll try a little bit harder to make sure I get the fluid exactly perfect, but for now it's working just fine. You know, like I said, it was about a quart low. It was shifting pretty decently then, and it's doing better now, mostly due to the new fluid. So I'm satisfied that it's good where it is. So anyway, I just wanted to make that little correction for you. Thanks for watching.